Is anyone else hot in here? Or is it just Zendaya? I'm kidding. I watched this movie because I love tennis. That's why I watched. That's the only reason I watched this movie. How's it going, everybody? Thank you so much for clicking on this video. Today we are talking about the newest film from Luca Guadagnino, Challengers. This movie's led by Zendaya, also co-leads Mike Faist and Josh O'Connor, and this was one of my most anticipated movies of the year. Now, Guadagnino's work in the past is not always connected with me, but even in the films that I didn't enjoy as much, I can still recognize and appreciate the style and the passion that goes into everything he does. He's got a very specific artistic flair that's no different with Challengers, but this time he is tackling a sports drama. Tashi, a tennis player turned coach, has transformed her husband from a mediocre player into a world-famous Grand Slam champion. To jolt him out of his recent losing streak, she makes him play a Challenger event, close to the lowest level of tournament on the Pro Tour. Tensions run high when he finds himself standing across the net from the once promising, now burnt out Patrick, his former best friend and Tashi's former boyfriend. Let's just get the fluff out of the way. This was totally my jam. I loved pretty much every moment of this movie. For everything that Guadagnino does great as a director, those elements are in this movie, and then some. He took his style and cranked it up to a level 15, and everything aesthetically about this movie, as well as narratively and the way it's all structured together, really worked. It was obvious surrounding the marketing and the plot of this movie that it was going to be a sports drama, but at the core of this, it was going to be a toxic love triangle, and they deliver on that. It's actually a lot more in-depth than I ever thought it was going to be. It's a movie filled with lust, betrayal, and characters that really, it's hard to root for them because they are all sort of twisted in their own ways and ultimately only going after their own selfish wants and needs. This comes at no surprise to anybody, but the film is also very erotic, but tastefully erotic. It plays with those themes and those sensibilities in a very interesting way. Everything feels like it's playing a piece in a bigger puzzle. And sure, there are some scenes that are very steamy in nature and they're set up to be that way and they dive headfirst into those moments, but really there is an underlying sexual tension throughout this entire thing, even in the scenes to where characters aren't necessarily having what you would consider to be an intimate moment. The way Guadagnino structures the film and shoots a lot of these sequences, that tension is almost always present, but at times it can also be unsettling because it feels like it's being used as leverage more than actually being given into for true intimate connection. There's a lot that the story is diving into. It has multiple time jumps as well as just going into a lot of different depths into these relationships and the dynamic of these relationships. But because of all the back and forth and because of all the many layers that are involved, you really need actors that are going to be able to pull that off and really make you buy into that tension and the chemistry that they're trying to portray on the screen. And I really think the three main leads here do better than I could have ever hoped for. They did everything they needed to do to sell this complicated romance. I think this is going to be the role that breaks Zendaya out of any box she may have been into and really put her in the limelight as somebody who can lead a film and totally steal the show. She steals every moment in this movie. And ultimately, yes, she is torn between the two love interests that she's involved with, but above all, she's really just seeking victory, no matter how she can come across it. She plays a character that got the thing that she loves stripped away from her, and so she is willing to do whatever it takes to get back to that place of success. Now, in a lot of movies of this nature, they can have a tendency to put the sports on the back burner to focus solely on the relationships at hand. But in this movie, it very much keeps tennis at the forefront, and in a lot of ways, tennis is the backbone of this movie. Every decision is made based around a career move or a progression in the tennis world. How can they climb up the rankings? What is the next business deal they can make? What kind of match do I have to play to set myself up for more success in the future? And it becomes so obsessive that it almost overpowers any genuine connection or love these characters have for each other in the beginning. But these characters almost see the relationships they have with each other as vital to maintaining their success and their place among the rankings. Every tennis match is expertly filmed, especially the finale. There wasn't a moment that I wasn't completely invested, and they do their best to make it come off as realistic as possible. But another thing I loved is that the game almost never stops. Even when they're off the court, you can sense a back and forth rally between these characters. Their dynamics are very much structured like that of a tennis match. The way they go back and forth with one another, each character is constantly trying to fight for the upper hand. I spoke highly about Zendaya, but both Josh O'Connor and Mike Faist both have plenty of time to shine in the spotlight here and steal their own moments. The dynamic between the two friends in particular is very interesting and comes to a very thrilling and intense conclusion in the finale of this movie. Throughout the entire course of the runtime, I was trying to decide who I wanted to side with, who is in the right here, even though at the end of the day, when you really look at all of these characters and their motives, none of them are necessarily pure. It's filled with manipulation and greed and sleaze. I felt dirty at times while watching this and seeing the characters and the decisions they decided to make. But ultimately, that's what I would expect and hope for in a movie like this. I also can't help but mention the score here from Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross. I honestly think it's some of their best collaborative work together to date. Every moment is only elevated by the score. Every time it plays, the tensions rise, the stakes rise. You feel more in the moment. There's something very interesting they do here to where at times when the characters are having their back and forth moments, getting into those arguments, the score almost overpowers the dialogue. And that's something similar to what they did in The Social Network as well. Like if you think about the scene in the club with Jesse Eisenberg and Justin Timberlake's character, as they're talking, the score is just completely overpowering them, and you have to tune in really closely to hear what they're saying.
This is our time. This time, you're gonna hand them a business card that says, "I'm CEO, bitch." That's what I want for you. So where the hell is Eduardo?
To some, that could be distracting. To me, I felt like for what they were going for, they really pulled that off, and it really benefited the story. Because as I mentioned before, a lot of their dynamics off the court mimic what's going on the court. Having that continuous, overpowering, pulsating score only amplifies the constant power struggle that is going on throughout the entire movie. And the way they decide to end this movie really surprised me, but I think overall it worked for me because it doesn't necessarily deliver you with the satisfaction that you would hope for, but I think that was almost intentional. While it ends in a way that feels very dramatic and emotionally charged, it doesn't really have a finite conclusion. But for a movie that's dealing with these characters that are so obsessed and never satisfied, it almost felt fitting to have a conclusion that felt somewhat unsatisfying, because you know that regardless of the results of this final match in the film, the problems aren't necessarily over. It kind of leaves it up to the audience to decide what the conclusion is going to be for these characters in the end. Now, I would say my only issue with the movie, and I don't have many, is that for all of Guadagnino's style that works, I think he knows that it works a little too much sometimes, and he becomes a bit self-indulgent. There's a lot of slow motion, there's a lot of close-up shots, there's a lot of very unique editing cues that you would only find in a Luca Guadagnino movie. And in a few moments, it felt like we would go back and forth between slow-mo in real time repeatedly, a little bit too much, and it had a tendency to feel excessive. But this movie as a whole is about excess and never being satisfied and always wanting more. So in a way, it fits the progression of the film as a whole. Just for me, at times, it almost came across as a bit goofy and, like I said, overly indulgent. But overall, while I was excited for this movie, I didn't necessarily know what to expect, but what I got, I was very pleased with. This is definitely one of my favorite movies of the year, and by the time it was over, I just wanted more of it, and I think that that's always a good thing. But with all that being said, I'm gonna have to give Challengers a 9 out of 10.
I like it a lot.
So guys, as always, make sure to comment down below. Let me know your thoughts and opinions of the movie once you've seen it. Also, tell me, what is your favorite Luca Guadagnino movie to date? But thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to leave a like on the video and subscribe if you haven't already. And until next time, I'll see y'all later. Peace out.